When a woman in tattered clothes walks into a prestigious city bank, she's met not with service but scorn, mocked and dismissed by a senior banker too proud to look past her appearance. What no one realizes is that she's not just any walking customer. She's Olivia Grant, a tech billionaire with a quiet fortune and a sharp memory. What begins as an act of humiliation sets off a chain of events that will upend the very institution that dared to judge her. The Balance of Power is a fast-paced 8-part story of revenge without rage, redemption without request, and the quiet storm of a woman who doesn't need to raise her voice to own the room. Who really holds the power when the rules change? If you liked the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The marble floors of Hensley & Company Bank gleamed under the morning sun. Every inch of the lobby screamed wealth, gold-plated fixtures, glass chandeliers, velvet ropes. Suits moved briskly, heels clicked confidently, and the air reeked of status. Behind the polished front desk, Philip Carmichael adjusted his cufflinks and gave his reflection a smirk in the gold-framed wall mirror. His navy suit was pressed to perfection. His tie cost more than most people's monthly groceries, and he liked it that way. At 32, Philip was the youngest senior banker in the branch's history. He hadn't just climbed the corporate ladder. He'd launched himself up it 2 steps at a time, elbowing anyone slower. "Another strong morning, Mr. Carmichael," his assistant chirped, handing him a latte. Philip sipped, scanned the floor and sighed. Strong mornings die the moment the riffraff walks in. Right on cue, the front doors parted and a woman entered. Heads turned. She was maybe mid-30s, her hair tied in a messy bun, her coat torn at the sleeve, and her boots were caked in city grime. Her jeans looked like they hadn't seen a washing machine in weeks. Her eyes, however, were steady. She walked toward the desk with a calm stride, not rushed, not timid. Just determined. Philip's lip curled. "Here we go," he muttered. The woman reached the main counter. "I'd like to speak with someone about opening an account," she said. "Of course," replied the clerk politely before glancing nervously at Philip. Philip strolled over, his smile as thin as the patience he had left. "Good morning," he said smoothly. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" She blinked. "This is Hensley & Company, yes?" He chuckled. "Indeed it is. We typically handle private clients' investment portfolios, you know, people with money." He glanced at her coat. "Our services might not be the best fit for everyone." The lobby quieted. A woman at the loan desk frowned. A young teller's mouth dropped slightly open. "I'd still like to speak to a manager," the woman said evenly. Philip raised an eyebrow. "I'm the most senior banker on duty today. Why don't we save each other some time? There's a Chase Bank 2 blocks down. They're more inclusive." The words were coated in sugar, but the venom was unmistakable. The woman paused as if weighing whether to push further. She scanned the room. People stared, some pretending not to. "Name?" he asked sharply, lifting a clipboard and clearly not expecting an answer. She simply smiled. "I'll come back." Philip gave a mock bow. "Do bring a resume next time. We're always hiring cleaning staff." The doors closed behind her. Silence lingered. A junior banker, Melissa, approached him after a moment. "That was harsh." Philip scoffed. "Come on. You saw her. It's a boutique financial institution, not a soup kitchen." He turned on his heel and walked back to his office, smugness oozing from every step. He closed the frosted glass door behind him and dropped into his chair. He didn't notice the security camera above the front desk, nor the quiet blinking light on the receptionist's tablet that indicated a recording had been saved to the cloud. 4 blocks away, the woman stopped in front of a nondescript black car. Her assistant, Evan, stepped out from the driver's seat. "Did he take the bait?" Evan asked, holding the door open. She slid in, removed her coat and sighed. "Hook, line and cliché. You sure about this, Olivia?" Olivia Grant looked out the window, eyes narrowed on the bank's shining sign in the distance. "No one mocks a stranger like that unless they've done it 100 times before," she murmured. "He thinks I'm poor." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Well, you did wear my cousin's construction jacket." She grinned. "And you owe him a dry cleaning bill." They both laughed, but only for a moment. Evan started the car. "So what now?" "Now," Olivia said, pulling out her phone, "we buy a bank." Back inside Hensley & Company, Philip leaned back and stretched. He wasn't bothered. He'd dealt with dozens like her, People who wandered in from the streets thinking a bank was some kind of social service. He spun around in his chair and opened the portfolio of his latest client, a venture capitalist in Palo Alto. Now that was a real conversation. He didn't think twice about the woman in rags. Didn't think about her calm gaze. Didn't think about how she hadn't flinched even when everyone was watching. Didn't think she might be watching him even now. Didn't think he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The sleek penthouse office on the 41st floor of the Lucent Tower smelled of fresh espresso and polished ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with golden afternoon light. The skyline of the city stretched in every direction, a glittering monument to wealth, power, and the kind of ruthless precision Olivia Grant had mastered years ago. She tossed the tattered coat onto a nearby chair. "I swear that thing has fleas," Evan muttered, wrinkling his nose. Olivia smirked. "You weren't the one wearing it." "No, I was the one watching that banker look at you like you just crawled out of a dumpster," he snapped, pacing. "That guy, Philip, right? What a prick. I should have gone in there and done what?" Olivia interrupted gently, pouring herself a glass of water. "Started a fist fight in the middle of a bank branch? That's not how we operate." Evan clenched his jaw. "He humiliated you. In public." She took a long sip before replying. "He didn't humiliate me. He humiliated himself. He just doesn't know it yet." Evan leaned against her desk. "So we're doing this then?" She nodded slowly. "We're doing this." Olivia Grant hadn't always looked like a woman who could buy a bank on a whim. At 22, she was living in a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a fridge that wheezed like it had asthma. Her parents had died when she was in college, leaving her with little but a degree in computer science and a chip on her shoulder. She built her first company, an AI algorithm that predicted housing market swings, in a coffee shop using borrowed Wi-Fi and an overheating laptop. She sold that company 5 years later for $340 million. Then came a health tech startup. Then another. By 34, Olivia Grant had crossed the billion-dollar mark. Quietly. Deliberately. She never chased headlines or photo ops. She let the tech bros have their articles and ego. Olivia played for power. And lately she'd grown bored. Until Philip Carmichael reminded her exactly what it felt like to be underestimated. Evan placed a stack of folders in front of her. "Here's the bank's executive structure. Hensley & Company is private but mid-sized. They're old money, family-run, resistant to change. Conservative board, light media exposure, but high net worth clientele. Valuation?" Olivia asked. "About $260 million. Their parent company owns 58%. The rest is spread across investors, mostly dormant family shareholders and a few regional funds." Olivia tapped her fingers against her glass. "Anyone else sniffing around?" "Not yet. They're not seen as sexy. Safe, traditional. But they've got clean financials and strong community branches. Could be modernized. Scaled." She flipped through the executive bios, stopping at Philip's page. His photo stared back at her, confident, smug, perfectly coiffed. "Background?" she asked. "Philip Carmichael. 32. MBA from Yale. Nepo baby, his uncle's a minority board member. Promoted quickly. Lots of internal complaints, especially from female and minority employees, but no formal disciplinary action." "Of course not," she murmured. "How fast can we start?" Evan grinned. "Already did. We've begun acquiring minority shares through Shell Core. Quietly. No red flags. At the same time, I've contacted 2 of the oldest family shareholders. They're looking to liquidate. Let's get them to dinner." 3 days later, Olivia sat at a private dining table at the Bellamy Club, across from 2 elderly siblings, Margaret and Harold Hensley. They wore pearls and tweed, spoke in murmurs, and clinked their crystal glasses with careful grace. "I remember our grandfather founding that bank," Harold said with pride. "He believed in service. Decorum. Discretion." Margaret nodded. "It's not the most profitable institution, but it's always been ours. Lately though, the tone has changed." "Changed how?" Olivia asked, dabbing her mouth with a linen napkin. Margaret hesitated. "There's a coldness to it now. Clients have left. Staff turnover is rising. I suspect it's the leadership. That young man, Philip, is ambitious but unkind." Olivia smiled slightly. Then perhaps it's time for a new vision. Harold chuckled. You're very direct. I found it saves everyone time. They shared a look. Then Harold leaned forward. Tell me, Ms. Grant, what would you do if you owned the bank? Olivia's voice didn't waver. I'd make it modern, inclusive, and relentless. A place where the working class isn't mocked and the wealthy don't feel bored. I'd install leadership that serves, not rules. And I'd make damn sure no one feels small in their own city. There was a long silence. Margaret broke it with a single nod. We'll sign. Back at the penthouse, Olivia reviewed the next phase of acquisition. With the Hensleys on board and her shell companies holding 17% of shares, they were past the tipping point. Evan stared at the flowchart on the screen. You really think he doesn't suspect anything? He's too arrogant to see the threat. In his mind, poor people don't own banks. Women in torn jeans don't sign checks. She looked at Philip's photo again, and this time she smiled. It's almost sad. Evan scoffed. You don't sound sad. She turned toward the window, watching the lights flicker on across the city. No, she said softly. I'm enjoying myself. The server room at Grant Strategies buzzed like a digital beehive, low, constant, humming with data. Evan stood by the glass wall, arms crossed, watching two analysts scroll through transaction logs and internal memos from Hensley and Company. You're sure this is legal? One of them asked without looking up. Perfectly, Evan replied. It's all public or acquired through the proper partnerships. And even if it weren't, do you want to be the one who tells Olivia to stop? The analyst quickly went back to typing. Olivia sat in the conference room, scrolling through an iPad. Line after line of data flicked past her eyes. Executive bonuses, internal complaints, risk models, branch performance metrics. Start with the dirt, she said. Evan handed her a red folder labeled Personnel, Internal Issues. 5 complaints filed against Philip in the last 18 months, he said. All dismissed quietly. HR logs show recurring coaching sessions after meetings where he insulted staff, especially women in non-executive roles. Pattern of behavior? Oh, he's practically painting it on the walls. Olivia flipped to a transcript of an internal meeting. Let's not waste time on community lending. That's not where the money is. We want clean, crisp clients. Appearance matters. No one wants to sit next to someone who smells like a bus stop. She raised an eyebrow. Bold, considering the bank slogan is, banking for all. That tagline is from the 1980s. They stopped believing it around 2004. Olivia slid the folder aside. Start building a case file. Not for legal action, just in case we need to make the board uncomfortable. Evan grinned. We're already halfway there. Across the city at Hensley and Company, Philip leaned over a conference table littered with spreadsheets. His voice echoed in the boardroom. I'm telling you something's off. Trading volume's up. Shares are moving quietly, slowly. No media. No flags. But it smells like consolidation. His colleague Avery Ng blinked. So, what? You think someone's targeting us? Philip nodded. I think we're being acquired. Or worse, set up. Avery folded her arms. The board would know. We'd have gotten wind. Not if they're in on it. She gave him a sharp look. Paranoia doesn't suit you, Philip. No, he muttered, but being blindsided wouldn't either. Meanwhile, Olivia and Evan sat in a downtown cafe just 2 blocks from Hensley and Company. She wore a blazer this time, though she kept her hair tied back and her makeup minimal. They were meeting Lisa Grayson, Hensley's former director of community lending. Fired 6 months ago without cause. Why now? Lisa asked, frowning as she stirred her tea. Because the people who made you feel disposable are about to find out they're not as untouchable as they think, Olivia replied calmly. Lisa chuckled darkly. You must have met Philip. Olivia's gaze didn't shift. You could say that. Lisa leaned in. He killed every inclusive initiative we started. Cancelled outreach programs. Closed the only branch in the South End, said it wasn't aesthetically aligned with the brand. And what happened when you pushed back? I was demoted. Then I was gone. Evan passed her a sealed envelope. There's a consulting contract in there. You'll advise us during the transition. Full salary. Full discretion. Lisa opened it, scanned the top line, then looked up, stunned. You're serious? I'm not just buying a bank, Olivia said. I'm building something better with the pieces. A week later, Philip received a strange call. "Mr. Carmichael," the woman on the other end said, "this is Joyce Sutter with the Department of Financial Oversight. Do you have a moment to confirm some data?" His fingers froze on the keyboard. Joyce rattled off a list of figures: branch growth, net lending, executive bonuses, and then casually dropped the hammer. "We've received an anonymous inquiry suggesting irregularities in your loan approvals and demographic coverage. Nothing formal yet, but we're opening a review." Philip's stomach turned. "That's absurd. We run a tight ship." "Well," Joyce said not unkindly, "tight ships don't usually leak this much data." He hung up, sweating, then marched down to Avery's office. "We're under review." She raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Too fast. Maybe someone is consolidating. Or exposing you. Someone is playing a very long, very expensive game. Avery looked at him, genuinely curious now. "Who do you think it is?" He didn't answer. Because in truth he had no idea. Olivia sat with her legal counsel the next morning, finalizing acquisition strategy. "With the Hensley shares, the equity from the venture funds, and the dormant holdings we've picked up, you now control 47.2% of voting power," her lawyer explained. "Another 4% and you effectively control the board." "And the family shares?" Olivia asked. "Margaret and Harold have begun encouraging their cousins to sell as well. Sentiments shifting in your favor." She nodded. "We'll give them generous buyouts. No one gets hurt, except the culture. The board is requesting a closed-door session next week. They suspect something. They don't know it's you yet." Olivia smiled slowly. "They will." That night, back at the penthouse, Evan found Olivia staring out at the city, the skyline reflected in the glass like a promise. "You ever think about stopping?" he asked. "Just cashing out, buying a private island, growing pineapples or something?" She laughed. "I don't like pineapples." He leaned against the glass beside her. "This is personal, isn't it?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "When I walked into that bank, I was nobody to them. Less than nobody. But I wasn't looking for vengeance. I just needed a reminder." "A reminder of what?" She turned eyes hard now. "That respect isn't something you're owed. It's something you give, or lose everything trying to keep." The tension inside Hensley and Company was so thick, it could have been sliced with a letter opener. People didn't talk the way they used to. They whispered. They typed slower. They paused longer in the hallways, casting wary glances behind them. And Philip Carmichael noticed all of it. He stood at his office window, watching a junior banker scurry across the lobby like a squirrel dodging traffic. "Second one this week to request a transfer," muttered Avery Ying, stepping in behind him. "That's 5 this month." Philip turned. "People transfer. That's not the issue." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what is?" He hesitated before answering. "There's a predator circling the bank. I feel it. I don't know who they are, but they're smart. Quiet. Deliberate." Avery dropped a folder on his desk. "Well, the board thinks it's your paranoia, not a predator. So you might want to dial it down a notch." He stared at the folder. Inside, minutes from the most recent board meeting. Buzzwords like divestment, restructuring, and generational pivot were underlined. "What does generational pivot even mean?" he muttered. "Means they want new blood. New direction. Maybe a new face." His jaw clenched. "Not while I'm here." Avery studied him. "Maybe because you're here." 2 floors above, the boardroom buzzed with more tension than Philip could guess. Margaret and Harold Hensley sat quietly while their niece, Lydia, read aloud the most recent buyout offer from a shell company called Radian Holdings. "They're offering a 12% premium over market value," she said. "Cash." The chairman, Arthur Dalton, tapped his fingers on the polished table. "They've already bought out most of the dormant shares. If they acquire 2 more family blocks, they'll be the majority voice in every vote." Margaret sipped her tea. "Perhaps it's time." Arthur glared at her. "You'd hand over the legacy your grandfather built to a stranger?" Margaret met his gaze. "I'd rather hand it to a stranger with vision than let it rot under someone like Philip." Silence. Harold gave a reluctant nod. "She's not wrong. He may be competent, but he's cold. Untrusted. If the staff is bailing, the clients won't be far behind." Arthur looked around. "So you'd all rather side with the devil we don't know?" Margaret smiled faintly. "I've met the devil we do know. I'm open to alternatives. Meanwhile, in a cafe tucked behind a florist's shop, Olivia scrolled through social media chatter on her private account. Something's up at Hensley. 3 senior VPs have gone silent. Internal memo leak. Unconfirmed reports of an acquisition attempt. Odd time for it. Heard Philip Carmichael went full meltdown mode yesterday. Evan handed her a fresh espresso. They're squirming. They should be. She paused, eyes narrowing on one comment thread. I work there. Something's off. A woman came in a few weeks ago, dressed like a street artist. Philip humiliated her. Now everyone's nervous, like karma showed up in a power suit. She smiled. I think it's time for a second visit. Evan raised an eyebrow. Same look. No, she said, standing. This time I'll dress like the future. Philip stood in front of a monitor in the bank's security room, watching footage from 3 weeks ago. There she was, the woman in the tattered coat, walking through the lobby like she didn't care about the stairs. Calm, confident, intentional. He hit pause, zoomed in. There was something in her eyes he hadn't noticed before. Composure. Then he fast-forwarded. The same woman leaving. No shouting. No scene. Just silence. Like someone who had already won. What are you doing? Asked Avery suddenly behind him. He stepped aside, recognizing a mistake. She wasn't poor, was she? No, Philip said slowly. She was dangerous. 2 days later she returned. This time in a tailored charcoal blazer, cream silk blouse, and heels that tapped like gavel strikes on the marble floor. Heads turned again. But not in disgust. In awe. Philip, walking out of a meeting, froze mid-step when he saw her. Their eyes met across the lobby. He swallowed hard. She smiled. This wasn't the same woman he'd mocked. This was someone who owned the room, and maybe soon much more. He approached, this time without smugness. Miss Grant, is it? Correct. What brings you back? Oh, she said lightly, just following up on some investments. He faltered. Investments. In Hensley and Company. She tilted her head. You've heard of Radian Holdings, I assume? His stomach flipped. That's you? She leaned in slightly. That's me. Silence stretched for 3 long seconds before he spoke. Why? You mocked me, she said. In front of your staff. In front of strangers. Not because I said something wrong, but because I looked poor. His voice tightened. I didn't know. Exactly, she interrupted. You didn't know. And you didn't care to. A few employees nearby pretended to not eavesdrop. I'm not here for vengeance, she added. Just balance. Then she walked past him and straight to the executive elevator, swiping a temporary guest badge that someone clearly approved at a very high level. Philip stood frozen, trying to calculate how long he had left. That night, Olivia met with 3 remaining family shareholders in a private library. I'm not here to dismantle your grandfather's legacy, she said, but I am here to update it. Your institution is 2 decades behind and 1 disaster away from obsolescence. We don't take threats lightly, said one. This isn't a threat, Olivia replied, pulling out a manila folder. This is the list of clients who've moved their accounts in the last 6 months. And a list of employees who've left for more modern institutions. She handed it to them. That's what stagnation looks like. They looked at the papers. Then they looked at her. And they said, when do we vote? The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. By 8:15, the Hensley and Company boardroom was already filling with murmurs, shifting chairs, and rustling paper. Every executive in the room sensed it. This wasn't going to be business as usual. Not with the whispers, the mysterious share buyouts, and the woman in the silk blazer who had walked through the lobby days before like she owned the place. 'Cause maybe she did. Philip arrived at 8:57. Late by his standards. He usually liked to be the first one in the room. But this morning he felt like a man walking into his own trial. He took a seat at the far end of the long walnut table. No one said hello. Avery gave him a look, neutral, unreadable. Harold and Margaret Hensley avoided eye contact. Arthur Dalton, the chairman, was already flipping through a packet of agenda documents, brows knit in concern. Then the double doors opened. And she walked in. Olivia Grant. In a fitted navy suit, a silver pin on her lapel, and confidence radiating from every step. Philip's stomach dropped. So did several jaws. Arthur cleared his throat. And you are? She smiled pleasantly. Olivia Grant, representing Radian Holdings. You purchased several family blocks, Arthur said slowly. But we weren't informed you'd be attending. You weren't, Olivia replied, walking to an empty chair near the center. Because I wasn't ready. But now I am. The room went quiet. She pulled a thick folder from her bag and set it on the table. I now represent 51.3% of the voting shares of Hensley and Company. A silence dropped that was so heavy it seemed to darken the room. Philip sat perfectly still, as if any sudden movement might make the moment worse. Arthur blinked. You what? Margaret and Harold have signed their final agreements, she continued. Combined with existing blocks I've acquired through Radian and affiliate funds, I now hold the controlling interest. You can't just, Philip began. I can, she interrupted. And I did. Arthur cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. Miss Grant, this is highly unusual. No more unusual than a banker publicly humiliating a prospective client in front of staff and customers because of her appearance, she said, voice calm but sharp. That, by the way, was me. 3 weeks ago. The room froze again. All eyes swung to Philip. He flushed a shade of red Olivia hadn't known human skin could reach. I didn't, he began. You did, she said. And it's fine. Because it led me here. What followed wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a clean, surgical removal. Olivia laid out a new proposal for the future of the bank. Modernization, digitization, expanded community reinvestment, a values-driven hiring pipeline. She showed graphs. She had case studies. She didn't bluster. She didn't grandstand. She presented a vision. And it was better than anything anyone else at that table had. The board voted. No shouting. No objections. Just 7-2 in favor. Effective immediately, Olivia Grant would be the new executive chair of Hensley and Company. Beck. Philip stared at the table, hands clenched under it. For a moment he looked like he might object, rage, argue, plead. But he didn't. He just sat there watching his legacy slip through his fingers. After the meeting, as everyone stood and whispered and shuffled toward the doors, Olivia approached him. Philip straightened, forcing a tight smile. Congratulations. Thank you. He hesitated, then asked, was this really about what happened in the lobby? She tilted her head. No. It was about everything you represent. Entitlement. Arrogance. Judgment without evidence. I used to be invisible to people like you. But not anymore. He looked away. I'm not here to destroy you, Philip, she added. But I'm not here to protect you either. So, what happens now? Now. She smiled faintly. You get to see what the bank could have been under better leadership. And with that she turned and walked away, again. That afternoon the news broke. Breaking, Olivia Grant acquires Hensley and Company in surprise power move. Business networks exploded. Analysts tripped over themselves to cover the story. Photos of Olivia walking into the boardroom in her navy suit appeared alongside grainy security stills of her first visit in tattered clothes. The contrast was too good. Too poetic. The narrative practically wrote itself. The woman mocked for her appearance now owns the building where it happened. A modern mogul school's old money. The banker who laughed is no longer laughing. Philip watched the headlines from his office. Door closed, blinds shut. He picked up a framed photo of himself shaking hands with a former client, then quietly set it face down on his desk. No calls came in. No one knocked. He was still a senior banker, for now. But everyone knew the wind had changed. And it wasn't blowing in his favor. Later that evening, Olivia stood alone in the now quiet executive suite. She looked out at the city, lights blinking beneath a deepening sky. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just took a deep breath. Evan stepped in behind her. You did it. Not yet, she said. Now comes the hard part. He nodded. Philip? He'll make a choice soon. Adapt or fade. You think he can? She thought for a long moment. People can surprise you. But only if they're willing to be surprised themselves. She turned to the window again. Below, the Hensley and Company sign still glowed in gold. But change had already begun. 2 weeks had passed since the announcement, but inside Hensley and Company, it felt like an entirely different lifetime. The elevator dinged open every morning at 8 o'clock sharp, and Olivia Grant stepped out with her sleeves rolled up, laptop under one arm, and a team of sharp-eyed specialists behind her. She didn't walk like a figurehead. She walked like someone who intended to build, by pulling apart every single rotten beam. They called it the Clean Slate Initiative. But for the people who had been hiding things, it might as well have been Judgment Day. "Where are the rest of the community reinvestment records?" Olivia asked, tapping rapidly on her tablet as she met with the internal audit team in the executive conference room. "We're still recovering files. Some were marked non-essential and excluded from quarterly reviews." "Non-essential to who?" she asked sharply. The team shifted uncomfortably. "Any department labeled outreach or compliance goes to the top of the list," she said. "I want a full report on who buried them. I don't care if it's a VP or a part-time clerk." They nodded and scattered. No one dared push back. Philip had been summoned to a meeting, his first with Olivia since the board vote. He wasn't in the mood for a lecture or a firing, but he dressed carefully anyway. When he stepped into her office, he was surprised to find it surprisingly unadorned. She hadn't hung her name on the door. No ego wall. Just a standing desk, a large window, and her laptop glowing with color-coded reports. She didn't look up as he entered. "You wanted to see me?" he said. Still not looking up, she replied, "Sit." He obeyed, jaw tense. "I've had your department under review," she said. "Your numbers are solid. Clean on paper. But the people you've burned along the way, that's where the rot starts." "I've done nothing illegal," Philip said stiffly. "Did I say illegal?" She looked up, finally meeting his eyes. "You've run this place like a private club. You reward similarity and punish difference. That may be legal. It's also cowardly." He flushed but didn't answer. "I'm not firing you," she said. He blinked. "Yet." Now he stiffened again. "What does that mean?" "It means you're being reassigned. Temporary demotion. You'll serve a 6-month term at our Westside Community Branch." His mouth dropped open. That's a teller's post." She shrugged. "No better way to understand who we serve. I've been a senior banker for 9 years." "Then this should be easy," she said. "Unless your title was the only thing holding you together." He stood abruptly. "You're humiliating me." "No," Olivia said calmly. "I'm giving you a choice." Philip reported for duty the next Monday at 9 a.m. The Westside Community Branch sat between a school and a laundromat, and the only suits anyone wore were on Sundays. The branch manager, a patient woman named Jada, greeted him with professional distance. "We're open to walk-ins, loan guidance, and language support," she said. "Most of our clients are bilingual. Some don't trust banks. Your job is to make them feel like they can." Philip stared around at the chipped walls, the old chairs, the plastic pens on tethers. It was like stepping onto another planet. Meanwhile, Olivia launched the second phase of her reforms. She reinstated the community lending program with Lisa Grayson at the helm, created a whistleblower protection channel, and implemented mandatory anti-bias training, starting with the executives. The media had a field day. From boardroom to branch, new owners' bold reforms shake up old money bank. Philip Carmichael demoted after acquisition fallout. Philip saw the headlines while eating lunch in the staff kitchen between helping a retired man wire money to his daughter in Honduras and assisting a teen mother set up her first savings account. He shut off his phone. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't know who he was anymore. At HQ, Olivia reviewed a client satisfaction report from the last quarter. She noticed something strange. Westside's numbers were climbing. She called Jada. "What's changed?" Olivia asked. "Believe it or not," Jada said, "Philip, he shows up early, listens. He doesn't talk down to people anymore. It's like he's trying to prove something." Olivia didn't respond right away. "He cleaned the waiting room himself last week," Jada added. "Didn't tell anyone. Just grabbed a mop." Olivia hung up and stared at the ceiling. People could surprise you, she thought. That Friday she drove to Westside unannounced. Inside, the lobby was full. Parents, elderly couples, students. She spotted Philip at a desk, helping a woman navigate an app in Spanish with a printout and genuine patience. He didn't see her. And Olivia didn't interrupt. She just watched. Later that night, in the quiet of her office, she wrote a memo. "Some roles teach us power. Others teach us purpose. For too long this bank favored the former. That ends now." She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. then typed. Effective immediately, the Clean Slate Initiative enters Phase 3, reinvestment. Not in marble or marketing, but in people. For the first time in years, Philip Carmichael set an alarm to wake up, not to schedule a meeting, not to get ahead of competitors, but because he had somewhere meaningful to be. The Westside Community Branch opened at 9 a.m., but Philip liked to arrive by 8:15. The early quiet gave him space to breathe and reflect. A month ago he would have called the place small, underfunded, irrelevant. Now it felt like the only honest building he'd ever worked in. His morning routine had shifted from espresso and market reports to coffee brewed in a staff room with a flickering bulb and conversations that mattered more than numbers. "Mr. C," said Daryl, a 12-year-old whose grandmother had been trying to teach him about saving money. "Did you see? I made it to $20. Philip grinned. "That's a strong start. Remember, it's not how fast you grow it, it's how often you add to it." Daryl beamed. Once, Philip might have rolled his eyes at that moment. Now it felt like a win. Meanwhile, back at HQ, Olivia reviewed the first quarter metrics under her leadership. The numbers told the story she hoped they would. Customer retention up 17%. Internal complaints down 43%. Net new accounts doubled across 3 community branches. Media sentiment, overwhelmingly positive. And Westside? Westside had become the pilot branch for a new loyalty program, and was outperforming 3 upscale branches combined. Still, Olivia didn't smile. Not yet. Numbers were only half the truth. People were the rest. Lisa Grayson, now officially VP of Community Strategy, knocked lightly on Olivia's door. "You've seen Westside's numbers?" "I have," Olivia said. "They're surprising." Lisa sat across from her. "Philip's changed. That fast. Sometimes the fall teaches you faster than the climb." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Is this a redemption arc, Lisa? Are we writing one of those?" Lisa grinned. "Not unless he earns it." Olivia leaned back. "Let's see what he does when he has the chance to leave." That chance came 2 days later. Avery Ng stepped into the Westside branch holding an envelope and an expression somewhere between amused and anxious. Philip looked up from behind the counter. "Promotion offer," Avery said simply, handing him the envelope. "Olivia's orders." Philip opened it. A mid-level executive position. Office back at HQ. No bells and whistles, but full title, benefits, and a chance to step out of the teller line. His heart beat faster. He looked at Avery. "Why now?" Avery shrugged. "Maybe she wants to see what you'll do. Maybe she thinks you've earned it." Philip stared at the paper in silence. That evening the bank was quiet. Jada approached him while he was locking up. "She's giving you a rope," she said. "Not a ladder." He didn't look up. "And if I hang myself with it? Then you prove her right." He sighed. "I don't know if I belong there anymore. Or here." "Then ask yourself what you're trying to prove," Jada said gently. "And to whom?" Philip walked into HQ the next morning. He could have walked in proudly. Could have reclaimed his desk, his title, his skyline view. Instead, he walked into Olivia's office and placed the envelope on her desk. "I'm declining," he said simply. Olivia blinked. "Why?" "I'm not ready," he replied. "Not yet. I'm learning more at Westside than I ever did in a boardroom. I think I'm finally becoming who I thought I already was." She studied him for a long moment. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't performing. He was just honest. Finally, Olivia stood and extended her hand. "Then stay as long as you need. The offer will be here when you're ready." He took her hand and nodded. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, she added, "Philip?" He paused. "You were never the villain. You were just never told the truth." He nodded once and walked out. 2 weeks later, Olivia visited Westside unannounced again. The lobby buzzed with clients and chatter. Philip was helping an elderly couple translate a form into Spanish. He smiled when he saw her. "Miss Grant," he said, standing. "To what do we owe the honor?" "Routine check-in," she said, her voice light. Jada appeared beside her. "He's the one training new hires now. You know that." "I do now," Olivia said, smiling faintly. Philip glanced at the lobby, then back at her. "This place taught me something." "What's that?" "That banking isn't about what people have," he said. "It's about what they hope for." Olivia nodded. "Maybe you really are ready." He didn't answer. But this time he believed it too. 1 year later, the gold-plated sign on the front of the bank had changed. It still read Hensley and Company, but the serif lettering now stood above a new tagline etched in matte steel. Modern banking. Human first. A subtle shift, but the kind that spoke volumes. Inside, the headquarters no longer resembled the cold marble cathedral of old. The chandeliers had been replaced by soft pendant lighting. The velvet ropes were gone, as were the frosted glass barriers. Reception desks had been lowered to make eye contact easier. And the walls weren't lined with oil paintings of dead founders. They now held framed portraits of staff, customers, and neighborhoods. A woman named Angela, who used to clean the bank at night, now worked in client services after completing the in-house career training Olivia had introduced. A transgender student who once struggled to open a checking account without being misgendered now sat on the Financial Literacy Advisory Board. And at the Westside Community Branch, they'd added a second floor. Philip stood in the lobby of HQ waiting. His suit was still tailored but simpler. Less expensive. His hair a little less perfect. His posture softer but more assured. He wasn't returning as a senior banker. He was returning as head of community relations. It had been offered weeks ago. He hadn't decided until yesterday. Now he waited for Olivia holding 2 coffees, one black, one oat milk, light sweetener. She always took it that way. She arrived a few minutes later, dressed in navy again, but without the armor of her early days. "Morning," she said, taking the cup. "Morning." They walked through the new lobby together. Staff nodded. No one looked away. The air carried a sense of quiet purpose. "I heard about the partnership with the food co-op," Olivia said. "Nice work." "Thanks," Philip replied. "We're also finalizing the mobile branch idea for underserved neighborhoods." She stopped walking. "That wasn't in the proposal." "It wasn't. It was in a conversation I had with a grandmother at Westside. Thought it was worth listening." Olivia gave a small smile. "Imagine that." Later that morning, Olivia hosted a press event on the rooftop garden. The city skyline stretched behind her as reporters gathered, pens ready. "Today marks 1 year since I joined Hensley and Company," she began, "and we're not just celebrating what we've changed, we're announcing what we're building next." She laid out plans for a new kind of financial institution. A startup fund seeded to help marginalized entrepreneurs. No-fee banking for clients under 25 or over 65. A financial literacy curriculum being piloted in public schools. Quarterly listening sessions with clients and staff alike. "This isn't about charity," she said. "It's about returning banking to what it was supposed to be, partnership, not gatekeeping." The crowd applauded. Cameras clicked. Analysts posted live commentary. But Olivia's eyes weren't on the press. They were on the people behind the curtain. The tellers, the assistants, the branch managers, the custodians. Because they were the ones who'd carried the weight. Who'd made the change real. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Olivia returned to the rooftop alone. Philip joined her after a moment, hands in his pockets. "Remember when you told me I wasn't the villain?" he said. "I remember. I think I finally understand what you meant." She looked at him. "And? I wasn't the villain. I was just living inside a story someone else wrote for me. Wealth, image, control, I thought that was success. And now I think success is who's better because you were in the room." She smiled, but not condescendingly. "Took you long enough." They stood in silence for a while, watching lights flicker on across the city. Then Philip asked, "Why didn't you just fire me back then?" "Because punishment doesn't change people," Olivia said. "Purpose does." The next morning, Olivia returned to the branch where it all started. Same marble floors. Same glass doors. Except now, the receptionist wore jeans under her blazer and offered coffee to walk-in customers. There was a children's reading area in the corner. A mural of local neighborhoods stretched across one wall. And on a shelf by the entrance, behind glass, stood a dusty, patched coat. Her coat. A small plaque read, "Worn by the woman who reminded us, wealth has nothing to do with money." On her way out, Olivia held the door for an older man with weathered hands and paint-stained clothes. He hesitated, uncertain. "You first," she said, smiling. He looked at her, surprised. "Don't see that much in places like this." "You do now," she replied. He walked in. She walked out. And for the first time, it didn't feel like two different worlds colliding. It felt like one world finally coming together. Sometimes, the richest lessons come from the poorest moments. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.